The reality of climate change and its impact are becoming more pronounced and clear every day. In this session, we will try to explore how technological solutions, digital and AI, can actually help to make a difference for the ecosystems, the communities, and for biodiversity. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Hamid Maher. I'm a managing director and partner at BCG. I'm based in Casablanca, Morocco, and I lead BCGX in Africa. BCGX is our entity around AI and digital, and I actually lead our climate analytics effort worldwide. And I will be your host for this session, the cutting edge of digitalization and AI for climate impact. In a short while, we are going to have a panel of actors that are touching upon the area of digital innovation and AI, and in the field for an interesting and insightful dialogue. But first, I want to introduce Johan Falk, CEO and co-founder of Exponential Roadmap Initiative, to say a few words.
Thank you very, very much. I'm super excited about this session. I spent 10 years in Intel and different type of tech companies before I shifted gears into the climate about 6 years ago. So this is really close to where I'm coming from. Just a few words on the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. We're not as famous as Google, which is our partner together with Forterra. But what we're doing, we're really building a powerful network of transformers, disruptors to drive transformation to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. I'll talk just a little bit about what we should use AI and digitalization for. So we just don't jump into the technology, but what is really the purpose. We all know the challenge. We're still going in the wrong direction in terms of carbon emissions. We basically need to halve emissions by 2030, but we are not on the right trajectory, which means that we're taking serious risks for humanity. But in order to cut emissions, the only way we can cut emissions is actually to scale up the solutions, to shift out the old economy. So our laser focus need to be on scaling up the climate solutions. And some of these solutions are, as we know, following exponential trajectories, S-curves, sigmoid curves. You're well aware of that. And we normally underestimate the potential of the solutions in the beginning. Once they reach the tipping point, we reach self-sustaining feedback loops, and they can grow incredibly fast. We see that with wind and solar, even if we have now really big challenges with renewable energy due to the interest rates and the economical situation, which creates some risk for this exponential growth just right now. This is a very simplified model. If we think about it, these solutions normally grow really slowly in the beginning, and at a certain point they pass a tipping point, and you get the self-sustaining feedback loops. And there are basically two sets of solutions which has passed that tipping point. That's renewable energy, and it's electrical vehicles. But our challenge is actually to push the other solutions over the tipping points so they start to follow that exponential path. So we have a number of solutions which can take us to the second halving and the third halving. And that is really where we see the opportunity to apply digitalization and AI to push these solutions. Let's see. Okay. It's a really simplified picture. This is one way to think it. Digitalization and AI is really indispensable to accelerate climate solutions and climate action. So basically it means pushing the curves to the left, pull in the solutions. That is basically, as far as we see it, the purpose of it. I like to just give one example which we will hear a lot about examples, great, fantastic examples in a minute, but one example, how we can apply AI in particular. We just launched a white paper today, which is about AI for clean energy and accelerating project pipeline development globally from Exponential Roadmap Initiative with my fellow in crime, Owen Gaffney, has been really leading that exceptional work. We know that the carbon budget will be exhausted in 6 years, and major infrastructure projects can take 5 to 10 years from idea to operation, just to get them. And as far as we see it, there is no really global project pipeline of potential 1.5 aligned clean energy projects. And there is absolute incredible opportunity to apply AI and machine learning to support creation of a project pipeline and to accelerate that. So this is really a new way of thinking. By using data points from 100,000 existing projects and apply criteria, this could actually be implemented, and all that knowledge can be shared between countries and different actors. And this can catalyze new projects optimized for social and environmental criteria. So please download this white paper and provide feedback. It's one example how we can apply this technology in a completely new way, just one. Okay. But I just want to wrap up and say that technology, AI, and digitalization is an accelerator. So if the economy is going in the wrong direction, unfortunately, it's accelerating us in the wrong direction, raising global warming. So it can actually drive us in two directions. We need to be 100% aware of that. So we need to have a compass in regards to AI and digitalization. We need to allocate our forces to accelerate these tipping points and apply the technology for sustainability, and bring that compass into all the digital companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Johan, for those interesting words and insights. Now we'll have a panel discussion that will go on for about 40 minutes. And it's my pleasure to welcome on stage Antonia Gawel, the Director of Sustainability and Partnership at Google, Matt Spelbach-Sharp, Heads of Sustainability for Ericsson, Sofia Kiani, founder of Climate Change Cardinals, Tom Crowther, professor at ETH Zurich and founder of Crowther Lab. A warm welcome to all on stage. It is great to have you here. I have a few questions for you to go around, and I hope we are going to also have like a more opportunities to bounce back on the question that I will ask, and also get some questions from the audience. So I will start with you, Antonia, if you're okay. Antonia, Google is working with AI for sustainability on so many fronts. Can you please give us a few examples and concrete results you have seen?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think pleasure to be with you all here as well, and thanks to Futura and ERI for co-creating this space with us to have these types of conversations. I think, as was said and shown, AI is sort of one technology and solution amongst the many, many things that we need to drive to actually achieve global decarbonization. So I think we want to put it in that context as well. But there are some really incredible results that we're already seeing. So I'll just maybe give a couple quick examples. So one is information. So Google, as an information company, does really believe that information is very much power for people. And so there's a number of products and solutions where we're trying to kind of bring information that can help people make good decisions. So one being eco-friendly routing. You all, many of you, I won't say you all, many of you will have kind of maps. In Maps now, when you look for directions to a particular location, it will show you the route, but also a green routing option that can help you take a more fuel-efficient route that will help to decarbonize part of your trip. And I think what we've seen through that is real emission reductions, the equivalent of 1.2 million metric tons of CO2 emission equivalent in 2022, which is about the same as removing 250,000 fuel-based cars from the road. Another example, I think, you talked about industrial emissions. So industry represents about 30% of global CO2 emissions. It is a huge lift to reduce industrial emissions. So what can we already do today? We need to obviously innovate technology that will reduce industrial emissions, but there's also technologies that can be applied to help tackle those emissions in the near term. And so one example of that is a technology that our research team has created for the aviation industry. So surprising to me was that contrails, the kind of the little clouds that you see behind airplanes when they fly, that actually represents about 35% of the global warming impact of the aviation sector. And through AI, the team has managed to develop technologies in collaboration with American Airlines to help pilots make slightly different decisions in terms of how they maneuver the aircrafts to avoid contrails. And by doing that, they've already shown that they can actually reduce contrails by about 54%. So again, this is sort of solutions that we can apply today, while in parallel, we look at the innovations required to kind of really reduce the fuel emissions from the aviation sector as well. A last quick example that I'll give is prediction. So again, unfortunately, we are seeing a huge increase in the number of extreme weather events globally, and these events are impacting some of the most vulnerable people in the world. So flooding is one of those types of events, and our team also has created a solution called Flood Hub, which is basically, again, using AI technology to help work with organizations, local communities, and governments to be able to predict flooding events, extreme flooding events, up to 7 days in advance, which actually is important because it gives the time for people to be able to respond in the right way. And this was launched in 20 countries in 2022, and just this year expanded to 80 countries around the world, reaching up to 460 million people globally. So those are just a couple examples looking at information, prediction, optimization, where we're trying to kind of apply AI as an immediate solution, while we also work on kind of the broader systemic transformations that we need to see.
Thank you, Antonia. Those examples are compelling, and AI can make a difference. We hear about the impact of this solution. Now, the question that I would have for you is how to scale them. What kind of policies and partnership do we need to actually make the best use of those solutions?
I mean, I guess I would start by saying that partnership is really at the core of both building these solutions. So in the case of contrails, it was a partnership with American Airlines, but also the aviation authorities, to ensure that when we think about kind of solving for these problems, we're working with the users up front, but also the stakeholders that are involved in the sector. So on one hand, in order for a solution to scale, you have to design it from the front end with the user of that solution. And I would say the same for Flood Hub. It was a partnership with the WMO to make sure that the data was accurately kind of going in and being modeled. So I would say the answer to scale in a way is partnership with both the end users, to be able to make sure that the solution itself is useful at the end of the day and that it will achieve uptake. But also policy, to make sure that the policies are designed in a way that can help enable the deployment of these types of solutions globally as well.
Thank you so much, Antonia. Matt, can you tell us a bit about the Ericsson projects on building efficiency and how digitalization and AI actually helped make that a reality?
Thank you. And I think it's very closely related to what we talked about before here and on sort of how digitalization can enable other industries. I mean, our industry, Google and us and all the data centers, all the networks, everything sort of that you have in your phone and so on, that's 1.4% of global emissions. 1.4%. That saved us through COVID, right? So it's quite small, but already with those solutions and existing solutions that we had back when we started taking the decisions, we could save 15% if we scale them, like Johan talked about earlier. And with AI and machine learning, there is another incremental 5%, so up to 20% of global emissions by scaling this until 2030. So it's massive. It's sort of almost half of what we need to do through scaling the AI solution. So that's why what Johan talked about earlier, this moving this earlier. So our project then, what we did, we have talked about this so much and for such a long time, but for some reason, we are super bad at advocacy. it seems, because in the taxonomy, our technology is not included. In sort of the Net Zero Industry Act in Europe, it's not included. In the US Act as well, it's not included. So there is nobody sort of investing in these solutions except for the companies themselves. So we said we need to demonstrate this better. So we developed an international standard for how to do a fair assessment. So we put that into the ITU. So you also include sort of the rebound effect, the negative effect of the solution, and the positive effect of the solution. So all these things are into that. And the first time we launched any study based on this new standard that was launched early this year, we used buildings. And it's not one building, one proof of concept. It's 1.5 million square meters in the Nordics. So it's substantial. It's a lot of data. And if you look on EU and other things, if we talk about buildings, most of the focus is on changing the heating system, double glazing, insulation. That costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time. This solution that Kiona, a startup, has sort of done takes 3 hours to install. And on average, over buildings that are built from 1920 until 2020, there are savings, more on the ones with poor standards of building and better in sort of the ones not age-based, but based on how they are. There is an average 6% saving on climate. 40% of all energy in the world goes to buildings. If we could save 6% with the 3-hour installation time using AI and machine learning to control the building, that is how powerful AI can drive things, comparing with insulation and everything. And then also you know what building is worst and so on. So you can go there and fix that first. So that's the project.
That's an amazing project. I mean, you said that you are challenged on let's say the syndication and make this solution known and used more broadly and adopted. What would you need to actually make those solutions scale and be adopted beyond the project you are running?
I think when we talk to World Economic Forum, when we talk to all this, nobody sort of gets it how powerful AI and digitalization, or digitalization is in general. We don't sort of need to go to AI. That's sort of the latest new thing. I mean, think about what happened with digital cameras or music players or everything else when we launched the smartphone and sort of moved everything into the phone. How, I mean, and as Johan said, exponential change is when you ask, when will this happen? And suddenly you wondered what happened, because it happens so fast when it turns. So you will, I mean, people were saying, oh, this CDs and things, it's never happened. And suddenly nobody has traditional record players anymore. Well, now they have again, but that's more sort of to hold this. I heard that people that don't even have a record player, they buy records. So they sit and listen to Spotify and hold the record in their hand.
Thank you so much, Mats. I'm turning to you, Sophia. What has digitalization and AI done in the area of global climate activism?
So I run a climate change nonprofit called Climate Cardinals. We now have grown into the largest youth-led climate nonprofit in the world. Essentially, our primary goal is to help to make sure everyone everywhere can learn about climate change, and we do that through climate translations. So our volunteer network has helped translate now millions of words of climate research into over 100 languages. And earlier this year, we had a really incredible opportunity to work with Google to pilot some of their new translation technology that's being assisted by AI to automate and expand a lot of our translation work. And we're excited to be building on top of that partnership. And really what that has shown me is how powerful a public-private sector and also intergenerational partnership can be. And also, I just finished my junior year at Stanford, and having taken a lot of courses in generative AI and just generally in computer science, it's been super fascinating to see what my classmates are doing. I just talked to one of my friends, and he used AI in creating a new algorithm to basically like tweak solar panels more effectively so that they can capture more sunlight. And just generally, I would say that there's a need for more technology to be utilized by activists to make our work more efficient.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you. AI, digitalization, what would be the challenge for global climate activism? I mean, do you see that this technology needs, have a huge impact? But how is there also some challenges that we need to be ready to prepare for?
Well, a challenge I would say is, at least in the vein of translation, I do think it's still really important to involve people instead of fully automating the process, just because of the cultural context. So our work all really deals with climate justice, and in accordance with that, it's incredibly important to be in consultation with communities and incorporating the nuance of the terminology and also the context, which of course AI cannot do.
Thank you so much. I'm turning to you, Tom, from the academic world, the research. How can AI help in the field of research, specifically in the area of climate change? I mean, we have several moonshots that we need to hit, and how can AI and digital actually help get there faster?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because obviously the answer is in every way possible. There is not an evolution of any sector that's not going to be driven by AI. But from my particular field of expertise, which is the environment, which is a big chunk of that movement, I can talk from the perspective of thousands of projects that exist on the ground. I'm the founder of an organization called Restore, which works with around 150,000 local indigenous communities or local populations or farmers who are working with nature to essentially promote the biodiversity that they depend on. And they're not doing that to solve climate change. They're doing that so that they can have sustainable livelihoods, but as a result, their collective efforts are saving all of us in these global threats. And for them, AI is, it's not like they're inherently thinking about the value of AI, but it provides context, because we can collectively, using AI, have much more sophisticated climate projections. So we can say the role of nature in fighting climate change. We've been able to show that nature plays about 30% of our climate contribution can come from conserving and revitalizing the health of these ecosystems, which gives them momentum and impetus to move forward. But it also allows us to provide a new level of localized insights. And that's the real challenge with biodiversity, because climate, 1 unit of carbon affects the planetary temperature, but biodiversity is a very localized thing. And so understanding localized insights can be really challenging, and AI has allowed us to tap into new insights that we could never have imagined. Through a partnership with the Earthshot Prize with Prince William, we got connected to the government of Costa Rica, and we've been monitoring their payment for ecosystem service program. But we've been able to do it through the sounds of nature, and we could show that the country is actually becoming more beautiful, and I mean objectively beautiful. We say it's statistically more similar to the sounds of Bach and Beethoven than it was 30 years ago, before the payment for ecosystem service program began. And that just provides inspiration for these practitioners because essentially that program was to inspire people to re-beautify the country, and it shows evidence quite clearly that it is objectively becoming more beautiful, supporting the people who depend on it.
Amazing. I have a question then for you, because you are in that field, you have access. You know how to use AI and to leverage it for your own research and your own field. How can we make sure that researchers and scientists around the world can actually make the same use you do for AI and digital solution?
I don't think we have to work at that. Everybody's doing it. I feel like everybody at the moment, every paper I read, someone says, "Oh, we're using artificial intelligence to evaluate this," and that sentence can be removed. There is no one who isn't making the most of the evolving technologies. In our particular space, it's transforming the predictive strength that we can get. About 5 years ago, the environmental movement had this kick of adrenaline when a group of scientists showed that the Earth, this potential to restore forests can help us with this 30% of the climate goals. And this really sort of brought a huge amount of momentum to the climate conversation and the environmental conversation. But it also had these massive threats because the movement also got injected with adrenaline for the threat of greenwashing. Essentially, people thought that meant mass plantations of trees, which can do much more harm than good. And to overcome that, what we've needed is to build infinitely more robust estimates. And for the last 5 years, to overcome this massive threat of the controversy around greenwashing, academics have been pooling together their insights from millions of locations across the planet. Using AI, we are all independently able to evaluate and build global models, millions of global models, and the consensus prediction can give you a far more robust understanding of what the potential is. And that paper is actually going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks, ultimately providing stronger and more robust support for the role of nature in fighting climate change, but it provides tangible steps forward for how the governments, as they move towards the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forests, can actually quantify and evaluate their impacts as they move forward to try and achieve those climate targets.
Thank you so much. So you sound excited about what exists already today. I'm excited too. But I would like to know, are there any exciting upcoming advances you're waiting for in the field of AI and climate?
The next generation of climate modeling is going to be the integration of Earth system models with machine learning models. Historically, our understanding of the climate comes from these things we call Earth system models. They're essentially mechanistic models. Scientists go, right, well, if a ton of carbon comes in, 50% of it stays in a plant, 50% of it goes into the roots, X% of it gets respired through the roots or the plants, and it's mechanistic models that are very good at projecting things into the future because they can build on feedback loops that we know are happening. But they're really bad at predicting what's happening now because they're essentially our thought child. But in fact, if we can, the other end of the spectrum is machine learning models where we just throw a load of data at it and we get unbelievable predictive power, but we have no idea what's going to happen in the future when things are different. The next generation of climate models is this integration of the two. So you can have an Earth system model with all the mechanistic theoretical data and knowledge of academia, but informed, so every parameter in that model is informed by large machine learning models so that the accuracy of those parameters is perfect, representing the predictive capacity and combining it with that mechanistic strength that can give us more confidence in our future projections.
Oh, so now we know what we are expecting in the future. Huh?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think thank you for those insights. I have a question. You know, I'm coming from Africa, and I work for several government and corporate, either in Southeast Asia or in Africa. And I always, when I hear that, I'm wondering, access to those advanced technology can be a luxury, can take time. As we look to scale those solutions, and this question is for all of you, how can we ensure that no one is left behind, that all groups have access, that scientists from a university in Philippines can also have access to this? So trying to get a sense of this. So it's a question for all of you.
Yeah, I mean, I can kick off. I think I'll first just say that we are coming to the tail end of Climate Week, and everybody's been, I think, quite busy, and it is a tough issue that we're working on. So I'm just going to say that I do leave this conversation quite hopeful and excited. I think it is exciting to sort of see some of the possibilities and where this can take us in terms of really exponentially driving for the climate impacts that we need to see. I think specifically to the question about access, I mean, I think coming back to some of the solutions that I mentioned, we have to design these types of solutions and technologies, again, with global users in mind. I mean, I think as you said, Sophia, one of the objectives is to democratize access to information, and we can only do that if the users of that information do have access to the solutions and technologies and are also involved in the creation of the outcomes of those solutions as well. The other thing I think that the solutions afford us is incredible capabilities that actually are needed in a lot of markets. I mean, I spent a number of years living in Bhutan, a very small country, and I can say that the capacity in the government actually to be able to monitor the ecosystems, to be able to actually do the job that they need to do in order to preserve the ecosystems is incredibly limited. And if you can start to bring solutions to them that facilitate visibility of the systems, facilitate the ability to sort of see the world that they couldn't necessarily physically see because of that capacity limitation, there is a huge kind of, I would say, access benefit that can be provided. But again, it requires an incredible amount of training and capacity and co-design of those solutions to bring that outcome to life as well. So again, I come back to kind of from design through to kind of use and application in terms of creating an accessible use of these solutions as well.
Thank you so much. Mats, maybe you still wanted to jump in.
Definitely, I agree. I think that what Ericsson has done, in fact, is that we have developed something since long. We call it Connect to Learn, using our technology to learn things. And we realized exactly what you said, that the capacity is limited in many places. So we have developed a university curriculum for people to learn about 5G and AI and machine learning, that we sign up contracts with countries, so they provide it in universities in Indonesia, in Africa, in different places. So very well used, but we also realized that it's not enough. So we took the same curriculum and changed it a little bit and gave it to policymakers through Smart Africa. So Smart Africa is educating the policymakers in Africa in AI and machine learning and sort of the fourth industrial revolution. And I think those two things together will definitely help to build a foundation for local development and so on. And then I think this last part, and maybe I'm a little biased, because I think we have 8.1 billion mobile subscriptions in the world today. Still, there is sort of 3.5 billion people that are not on internet. So we know that 5G, for instance, is the most efficient technology. Africa is way behind. So if I would ask for something, I would say that together we should invest in low-cost chipsets for 5G. It is sort of a universal technology. All the nets that are out there are upgradable to it. And then we could sort of get people on the latest and best technology much, much faster. So in a similar way as sort of we came together to develop, and this is not in Ericsson interest, because we already sell the networks, and we can sell 2G, 3G, and 4G. That's not a problem for us, but it's really for the people locally to get the access to the latest technology and being able to use it. In a similar way that we sort of invested in vaccines to get it low cost, why couldn't we together invest sort of joint money into this to get them up and running on the same level?
Thank you for this, Mats. Appreciate it. Sophia?
I completely agree with what you said. I would say education, especially for youth, is a big barrier that we need to overcome when it comes to AI. Of course, being at Stanford, I feel really lucky that I was able to take numerous courses and have a robust educational curriculum, but I know the same is not true for a lot of my friends who go to rural colleges, and so ensuring this democratization of education, and also I would say open sourcing and open access education initiatives. Like, I love that there are so many programs now where you can go and take like an online course from MIT and you can get a certification, just because this is the direction that our future is headed. And in the same vein that we need young people to be prepared for all the new green jobs that the IRA is creating, for example, we do need young people to be prepared for the next wave of AI and technology and to be equipped to take on jobs and roles in those fields.
And you believe AI can actually also help on accelerating education for those new jobs and expand that. Really interesting. So what about you?
I love that you've settled on this question for all of us, because I do think this is the biggest challenge facing any revolution, but particularly this AI one, because any technology will inherently be more accessible to some than others, and therefore has the potential to drive inequality. And as you said at the beginning, that I think addressing that fundamentally means designing everything with the least privileged people in mind. If it's designed explicitly to overcome these inequitable challenges, I'm not saying it will necessarily achieve everything, but at least it will do a greater job to untipping that balance. We've been working with Google now for the last 5 years on building this Restore, this network of people, and we're essentially democratizing access to both data and the tools that those farmers and practitioners need to better manage their landscapes. And those tools can be applied in any context that they possibly want. If you design with those people in mind, we will all benefit indirectly, both from the climate benefits, but also we'll still get access to the same tools. And if you actively design with the right users in mind, hopefully we can have AI tipping us towards a more equitable world rather than a more inequitable one.
Thank you for this. Let me bounce back on one topic we heard here as a way to actually facilitate access. In a survey asking the decision maker and leader around the world, 86% of them think that AI is a powerful solution for climate action. We had that survey done with the UNDP, UNESCO, etc. And there is another interesting element is that part of them find a lot of barrier in terms of access, but some of them, and that's 70%, they ask for more transparency and to be able to actually get access to what's under the hood, open up the black box. And you talked about open source. How can open source, peer review from academia, like Google is doing a lot with DeepMind, for example, all those pieces of research can be actually also something that can actually help on the adoption side of those solutions.
Sure. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Being open source is fundamental to the process, but I think there's also, it would be interesting to build, large language models or whatever it is, tools that have different levels of sort of data integration. I'm working a lot with TNC at the moment, who are building what I think is going to be a beautiful thing, again, for practitioners of environmental challenges, but this could apply to any sector. If you were to ask, is restoration good? And you look in the media, you'll get everything from it's the best thing in the world to the worst thing in the world. In fact, I've personally been quoted saying trees will save the planet and trees will destroy the planet, because a journalist loves to pull out the most striking version of the story. If instead we could have those models built solely from the academic data, so that whether it's a tailored or just a peer-reviewed data set can be, you could have your, you can ask your question purely to the academic literature, you'd get your literature review, you'd get your answer synthesized only by the raw information. I think you'd be able to have data and knowledge that is not filtered by the sort of chaos of the conversation, and that might hopefully be able to drive more tangible use of that information when we manage our landscapes.
Thank you for that one. Any reaction to this question, to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to agree, I think increasingly the question is how do you provide useful information, right? And how do you, in certain cases, ensure that that information is coming from authoritative sources, I suppose is what you're saying, which is some of the work that we've also been doing in the context of search. So like when you look up climate change, for example, it is pulling kind of information that is coming from authoritative sources first and foremost, to ensure that kind of people and users are sort of seeing the science that is sort of foundational to the work that we do. So I think, yeah, recognizing that is critical. It is the information, it's the accurate information, it's the authoritative information that can help people then make decisions on that basis as well.
But isn't it so that AI is both super smart and super stupid? I mean, you don't get anything else than your algorithm does, and you don't get anything else than your data. And if you have a data set that is sort of directed to sort of global north, but you have different conditions on the same in the global south, it will not give you the right answers, because you don't have any better answers than your data set can provide you with. And also, if you write your algorithm in a way that it sort of focuses with a certain perspective, you will get what you ask for as well. So I mean, I had a friend who sort of had ChatGPT write sort of a comment on LinkedIn, and all the data was wrong. Because it sort of goes and finds out the data. It doesn't know what the data is. It was on sort of, luckily enough, it was on our own emissions, and it was wrong. So we had to correct it. But anyway, I mean, that's what you get. You don't get better than sort of the average or what the algorithm can do with the data. So I think we have to also be conscious about that if we write it, we have to sort of take that into consideration and really have data that is relevant for what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Now I'm talking like...
Let me ask a last question before we take question from the audience. What is, I mean, in your mind, the top opportunity that can actually happen in the coming months, coming year, and the short term, and what is needed to actually make it happen. Leveraging AI and digitalization. We talked about long term, we talked about experimentation. In the short term, what's in your mind is a top priority that needs to happen?
I mean, I think in my mind as a top priority, I mean, to tackle climate change, there's things we need to do today in parallel with obviously sort of driving those systemic transformations and investing in R&D and kind of big scale reductions. I think the thing we can do today is scale actually some of the solutions that we have available to us, right? So we talk about things, you know, in the transport sector, for example, how do we kind of, you know, ensure that we make kind of inform and make aware of all the solutions that exist, kind of encourage people to take that eco-friendly route, encourage people to shift modes in terms of moving from even driving to, for example, other transport modes. So there's a lot of existing solutions that we have. I think it's the opportunity to educate, to make aware people around the world to actually use these solutions. That's probably the most immediate thing that we can do. In parallel with looking at sort of those high impact domains, right? So we look at transport, energy, industrial decarbonization solutions. Where can we apply and develop AI applications, again, that can sort of optimize those industries now in order to kind of affect change, you know, from one day to the next, in addition to then also sort of driving the R&D innovation that we need in technologies as well. So that's where I would focus.
Thank you. Sophia?
I would agree. I think that applying AI to existing technologies and reducing inefficiencies and putting forward optimizations is probably what I would say, in addition to just the general opportunity of mobilizing an entire new generation and upskilling them with new technologies that they can then use to further put forward innovation.
Let's use what we have in parallel of building what's coming next. Okay. Mats?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think, I mean, like this building solution that we have, it's so scalable, it's so fast. So I think that is super important. We do the same for our own networks and our own sort of small impact, even though we use sort of, that's our big cost, so we focus on it a lot. But then I think if there is something where I really would like to see a big change in mindset, it's how we manage the grids. We have such an undercapacity in the energy grids, and it will cost so much money to build it out. But if we could use sort of buildings, we could use electric cars and other things to balance the grid, to make sure that we can sort of balance it over time, then because we don't have sort of an energy problem from that perspective, we have a power problem. So it's certain times when we need energy, and then it's the power problem. I mean, in New York, you have sort of micro glitches of when everybody gets home after work and turns on their AC, then you get blackouts, and they are super short. But that's not an energy problem. It's just milliseconds or a couple of seconds or I think the longest one was half a second or something like that. But to build then a huge cable to cater for that would be super stupid if we could use all the electric cars and just help that power grid for those milliseconds. And if we could sort of create some sort of way of doing that, that would be my first focus, because then we could increase renewable energy from sort of current levels much, much faster than we could otherwise.
Very interesting. Amazing. A distributed, I mean, using AI to actually manage better the grid.
The power and the
distributed power generation and power sources. Really interesting. Tom, what's yours?
My dream one is the agricultural sector, because obviously it's a massive contribution to climate change, but also a massive contribution to the environmental degradation. And if we can optimize there is unbelievable potential for impact. This is 70% of the vegetated land surface on our planet is used for agriculture, and yet 50% of it goes to waste. And that is the kind of stuff that can be addressed very efficiently with machine learning and artificial intelligence, because we throw away so much food because the carrot is the wrong shape, or because the potato was slightly green. What we can identify now at very, very early ages of development from any individual seed is what is the shape and color and texture that that plant is going to turn out into. And so at early ages of development, you can identify which are going to be the ones that people want to use and which are going to be the ones that people don't. Obviously, I'd like to see a revolution where we all are a little bit more accepting and less wasteful, but given that that's a major challenge, a social challenge, we can address it at the core by using artificial intelligence to massively transform the efficiency of our agricultural systems. On top of that, I'd add to the fact that if we transformed the distribution of our agricultural sector, albeit that's an even bigger social challenge, we could improve the efficiency by over 25% if we had the right crops growing in the right regions. Ultimately, crops are grown based on where people wanted them to be, and there's a huge deficit between the efficiency, the maximum potential for the world's top 4 dominant crop species, based on where they would naturally be able to exist. And if we could reorganize that, we'd be able to save 25% of the land surface just by optimizing that regional, that biogeography of our agricultural sector.
I think your dream has inspired Antonia.
Yeah, well, I was first going to say that I purposely buy them as shapen carrots because I know other people won't. But no, I think the thing I just wanted to add a point as I was reflecting on kind of like the most important elements. I think one part of the conversation that keeps coming back time and time again is actually the issue of climate adaptation and the impacts that are being felt from climate change today. And I think we shouldn't shy away from that reality. Of course, we need all to keep driving mitigation, investing in solutions, drawing down that emissions curve. But I think everybody in the world has seen it. The kind of number of extreme weather events is increasing, the extreme heat is increasing, the fires are increasing. So how do we also make sure that we're helping people today adapt to those realities? And this is where I think, again, AI solutions, I mentioned Flood Hub, but also we work on extreme heat, wildfire prediction. These types of solutions, I think, really deployed into communities as quickly as possible can literally save lives. And so I think if we're really thinking about the most immediate concerns, we should really kind of turn our attention to the here and now while we also sort of dream up that future that we're trying to move towards as well.
So adaptation and resilience has just made it to the top of your dreams.
It has to be. I mean, people are dying immediately today from climate change, so we need to make sure we don't kind of forget about that reality as well.
Thank you for this. So we still have 1 minute for questions from the audience, and I will have to choose. You raise your hand first. So please, go ahead.
Great. So my name is Gagan. I'm the founder of Superhuman Race. And it's actually, this is a little bit of an antithetical question because I run an AI company. But just listening to the conversation that was going on here, one thought that came to my mind was that given the fact that we need to accelerate and the fact that we all love widgets, especially after the pandemic, everybody loves ChatGPT, write my essays, bring my food. But based on all of that, the abatement that is actually delivered by AI solutions is very small compared to real hard decisions that take time, money, effort for companies to take, right? So my question is, do you think that there's going to be an element of, this is new, this is cool, it's going to give me 6% savings or take 150,000 cars off the road in a year versus, I'm going to switch to an electric car or I'm going to move my manufacturing site because I don't have access to renewable energy?
I mean, my quick response is it's a both and. Like, we need to invest in decarbonization solutions. I mean, as Google, we have a 24/7 carbon-free energy commitment, which is about sourcing renewable energy on site in grids around the world. So we have to make those investments. We need to sort of draw that kind of, emissions curve down. And we need to sort of optimize within the existing system at the same time. So I wouldn't say AI is replacing the other work that we need, hard work that we need to do. It is a both and situation, is how I would reply.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much. Phil Brown from the Metabolic Institute. We talked about rubbish data coming in, rubbish inputs and insights coming out. There's constant discussion about data lakes, connecting, interoperability. How would you guys deal with that challenge together to create a data pool for the public good, where you could actually start to look, for instance, at nature-based solutions and actually augment what's already being done and connect into a lot of different initiatives?
So the question is around how to actually accelerate adoption, accelerate those solutions and innovation by creating global commons at the...
Better framing the question than I put it.
So I'll turn it to you, to the scientist first.
I'd answer with a big, strong, I have no idea. That is the challenge, right? Obviously, peer-reviewed literature is an easy way in. I've seen people doing it like with the IPCC report. You can ask loads of questions and get results from the summarized literature. And you can do, there's obviously various scales on which we can do that. But as I say, the answer is I have no idea. That is outside of my scope of knowledge. How we filter, how we decide what is legitimate and what is not is the greatest challenge of this thing.
I mean, I can just briefly mention earlier this week we launched in collaboration with the UN an initiative called Data Commons, which is basically, and you can look it up, datacommons.org. It is basically taking a huge set of public data sources across kind of a lot of authoritative sources, everything from the World Bank to the UN, taking that data and basically pulling it into effectively a sort of system that can be queried. And it is public and open source. So I think that's just one example to the question of like really trying to curate the data, make it very much more easily sort of searchable, accessible for the general public. And now that has sort of an interface that is using LLMs to make it easy to find. So that's just maybe one example of an initiative that we've just literally launched this week.
Thank you. I think we are at time. We'll have maybe one last question. And I think you tried twice to raise your hand, and you're looking at me in a weird way, so. No, first row, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Magnus Eban from Global Challenges Foundation, and I'm also an Exponential Roadmap Initiative fellow, actually. But I have a question that is not technical, but rather takes like the time. Why are we here right now? What is happening? We are here at the fringes of the UN General Assembly High-Level Week. And my question is that how relevant is what is happening at the UN General Assembly? And today it's the ministerial meeting about the Summit of the Future that is to take place 1 year from now. How relevant for this development that you are talking about is what is happening at the UN? How relevant are the processes like the Summit of the Future? What comes out of that? Mats mentioned the relevance of what happens in the EU, but are you working actively? How do you engage with the UN processes as companies?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. See, how are we actually working and collaborating with the UN cycle and the global policy making that is actually happening, and how AI and digital solutions are actually also in their agenda?
So I can start now. I think, of course, the academia is super important to provide facts and data into that system. But what we can do as industries, as leading industries, is really to do the studies that we do and present them in a good way so they get arguments. I have heard from the negotiators that when industry stands outside in COP and says that this is possible, it's much harder for somebody to say that it's not possible inside of the negotiations. So, we have heard it from the people working that the facts and the knowledge that we provide and also that we're standing up and saying it makes a big difference in their discussions. So that is sort of what we can do. So to support with solutions and facts, and then also with, in a way, some courage.
Yeah. No, I would just echo that in order to sort of drive a lot of the solutions more broadly when it comes to climate, it does require partnership with government in the development of supporting and enabling policies. When it comes to, for example, a transition to clean energy, industry, of course, can kind of come with technologies and solutions. You showed the kind of the technology curve to bring the cost of those technologies down and sort of facilitate the rapid deployment of those technologies in markets. You do need a partnership with government, right, to kind of bring the initial cost of those technologies down, but also to sort of facilitate that exponential scale and growth of technologies. So I think that partnership between business and government is absolutely critical, and hence sort of the support of the processes that are happening. There's obviously COP28 coming up around the corner as well. These are incredibly important discussions, and we do have sort of industries that need to kind of be there to support governments as they do make those bold decisions as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Antonia. So first, this is the end of this session. The recording will be available on the Solution House YouTube channel. I would like to thank everyone participating in this session, and Johan Falk, thank you so much from Exponential Roadmap Initiative, Antonia Gawel from Google, Matt Spelbach-Sharp from Ericsson, and Sofia Kiani from Climate Change Cardinals, and of course Tom Crowther from ETH Zurich. Thank you so much, and looking forward to the next discussion.